Welcome back in. Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920, The Jersey. I love Anthony Becht. I think he does a remarkable job as an analyst for the NFL, whether it's Jets games, Buccaneers games, or also in college. And I remember meeting Anthony for the first time when he was just out of the league down at the Super Bowl in Dallas. And I've got to spend a lot of times with him over the years, whether it's at Temple football games or Rutgers games. And the former 12-year NFL player Anthony Becht is kind enough to give us a few minutes right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Anthony, how you been, my man?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great, so I appreciate you giving us a few minutes today on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920, The Jersey. So let's get into Colin Kaepernick right out of the gate. I saw on your Twitter a few days ago that you wrote, Kaepernick went from unknown QB stardom, a pass away from winning the Super Bowl, now a complete jackass. Embarrassment to him and the 49ers. Why'd you tweet that and why you're so angry? Because I usually know that Anthony Becht is a cool, calm, and collective individual.
Yeah, honestly, to be quite honest with you, and I don't really take back anything I said, I was angry. I think there's a time and a place and a venue for everything. I have no problem with his stance, and I think a lot of people would say the same thing, but, there's reasons why we say the national anthem at games. There's reasons why we do things as players. We stand up, we honor those. I think it's pretty commonplace for all of us that, the reason why we're doing it is we all feel in that general moment that, we're honoring those that gave their lives, continue to protect us and for our freedoms of this country. And I know people want to turn it and say, well, that's part of it, those lack of freedoms. But I think in that moment, in that venue, it's completely wrong. I was completely against it. And I think, Kaepernick was wrong. And again, he can do his thing wherever else he wants to do it, but I just didn't think that was appropriate, and I stand by that, and I stand by my comments.
I agree with you 110% because, yes, in America, he has the right to do that and not stand up, and I understand that side of the argument, but still, I find what he did offensive, and just because, like you were saying, there's been people that have made the ultimate sacrifice for this country, and that national anthem means a lot, and there's a lot of pride in this country with that anthem, and when you're on U.S. soil, when that anthem is on, you should definitely stand up. So I do agree with you, but I'm curious to see how many more players are going to join in. You saw the Eagles' undrafted player and Mike Tavares say yesterday he was, and then his agent got in his ear, and now he won't stand in support of Colin Kaepernick, and he'll stand up for the national anthem. Do you see a lot more players in the National Football League join in and stand up, or sit down, I should say?
I'll just go out on a limb and say zero. I don't see another player doing this at all. So, we'll see. I could be wrong, but, I'd be willing to bet in favor of the side that no one else will do it. It'll be interesting to see what Kaepernick decides to do moving forward because obviously he's got another game coming up in preseason, and if he's on the team, then, that'll be a continuing conversation. But, hopefully he gets his – everybody else's side of this. And I know he keeps coming back and trying to explain what his voice and matter is. But, again, I think he has to be continually thinking that it's just not that cause why we're honoring the flag.
Do you think that it's awkward for those teammates in that locker room that see or he probably won't be the starter, but you have a situation with Colin Kaepernick, someone that's had success on that team, and he's making such a public stance by not standing up. Do you think there's any awkwardness in that locker room with the interaction with one Colin Kaepernick?
You know what? I don't know. I mean, I think guys, again, respect his motives for his decision to speak out and, stand by his what he thinks. But I think his actions in the venue is something guys just don't agree with, and they're not going to join in and do that stuff. So I'll just say, I don't know. I don't know if 100% of the locker room even embraced him prior to this, into this whole event. So, here's a guy that, be honest with you, is probably on the last leg of a young career that, should be continuing to blossom. And he's obviously a frustrated player because it's not clicking for him. So, hopefully he gets dialed in on his career. And if he wants to continue to play football, or, he won't be playing and he can continue to fight for the things that he wants to do full time. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But I'd say there's definitely some guys on the team that, rather just stay away from the whole situation.
Anthony Becht joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show, spent 12 years in the National Football League. So let's get to the Eagles, and we'll also talk a little Jets and Giants during the course of this conversation. New head coach in town for the Eagles, Doug Peterson here, Chip Kelly in San Francisco. So far, what have been your impressions of Doug Peterson?
I mean, there's nothing really to say yet. I mean, he hasn't had to make a real decision in a game atmosphere. He's obviously has the pedigree because he's been around, coaches that, had a lot of the game-winning experience, and Andy Reid obviously is one of those guys. I think, those things will be tested throughout the season. I think if you look at the division overall, it becomes a lot more, I should say, balanced with Romo potentially not playing the majority of the season. So just like that, your team instantly is in a position where, you feel a little better about the division itself. So I think that they have enough players to be competitive and to continue to hang into the division through the last couple weeks of the season. I don't know what it's going to take to win the division. It could be 8, 9, or maybe it's 11, 12 games. But I think as of now, I think they feel good about what they have. I just don't know if they have enough elite players to kind of get them over the hump to be a team that, they're a playoff team. They're only a playoff team because of the weakness of their division, and they would only get in because of the fact that if the division was weak and they won it, it wouldn't be a favorable record.
And it would also have to be that their offense would limit the turnovers, because this defense is going to create some turnovers, but I don't have the confidence in this offense to limit those turnovers just because of the fact, and let's call it how it is, this team doesn't have a whole lot of talent offensively, and one player that's been a disappointment has been Nelson Aguilar, and he just doesn't look comfortable on the football field. You played in the National Football League. How long does it take a player in his young career like a Nelson Aguilar, who didn't have an impressive rookie year, just get comfortable in the National Football League?
Well, a lot of things can attribute to the lack of success of a player. I mean, obviously the system is number one, might not be favorable to him. And then you have those pitfalls throughout the season. There might be some injuries tied in. I know he was banged up a little bit, not completely, but there was some injuries he was dealing with, and he was a rookie. So all of those things in comparison are definitely things that, pull a guy down. Now, you look at some receivers that come in that are drafted high that make immediate impacts, and they're the guys. I would say, being a first-round draft pick and, being thrown in there, being a guy that, they want to compete, and in the environment that he's in Philadelphia, you'd like to see a guy midway through his second year kind of start peaking. And in that third year, that's kind of when you're kind of catching fire and become a guy. So should he be offering more of his services at a more consistent clip this season? I would say yes. Has he look like he's going to be that guy heading into the season? I don't think so. But if they feature him, they try to utilize him and, build his confidence and try to build a rapport, I think you have an opportunity where he can be a guy that can, they can kind of build up and get that confidence going. But again, if you want a guy to be successful, you got to kind of be all in on him and willing to go through some pitfalls and still be able to kind of believe in his abilities and make him a part of your scheme.
I know a lot of Eagles fans would probably be happy if he did get cut, but I don't see a way that Nelson Aguilar is going to be cut from now until they trim this roster down to 53. But for a player that's on the bubble, and I know you've been there in the past, what is this week like for you going into that fourth preseason game when you don't know if you're going to be on the team or if you will be on the team?
Well, I'd say, if you didn't play a lot during the third preseason game later into that second half, and you probably should be thinking about something might not be going your way. And also, if you're an older player and you're playing well into the fourth preseason game, then you should probably think you might be well on your way. So those are the things you worry about. Obviously, I think the biggest thing is if you're out there or not, you need to continue fight, play hard, and showcase your skill set, because there are teams, there are injuries. I mean, just hearing Teddy Bridgewater kind of makes you sick a little bit. He looks like he might be missing the season, so it's terrible news. But again, that has a trickle-down effect to a lot of other positions. Vikings all of a sudden, bring another quarterback in, they lose a position, and just kind of cycles through the league. And sometimes that changes the perception of how a roster is. So, again, it's a fickle thing. I think going into this last preseason game, to be quite honest with you, I would say 90% of the teams have their roster set, and it's just a matter of really what few guys they're keeping on practice squad if they not already know that, and what couple guys are they waiting to get cut to snag from somebody else's list.
You raise a good point when you talk about a veteran playing in that fourth preseason game, and Michael Kendricks is a veteran. Now, he missed the first two because of injury, and the coaching staff says they just want to see a little bit more out of him. Is there something more to this? It just seems like it when you have a player who's penciled in to be the starter, and now he's going to be playing in that fourth preseason game.
Well, it depends what that conversation, has been internally between player and coach. I mean, if it's just kind of one of those, well, you need to see more, or, that's the kind of the vibe you're getting, then, he has to go out there and play his lights out and show that he can play at a level that, he's played in the past. So, I think, there's a rhyme and reason for everything. I think at the end of the day, nobody's ever really safe unless, you're a true dialed-in multi-contract guy. I mean, anything can happen. And, you look at Paul Kruger, for instance, in Cleveland. I mean, heck, he was starting this past week, when we were doing the Bucks game. So, and all of a sudden now he's on the streets, and he's a little frustrated. He's upset about it. But I also tweeted out that I think they did you a favor, because sometimes they wait to the last second to cut you because they want to cover their back in case the guy that they want to play or they think might play doesn't get hurt up to that point. So again, they always are in control. Very few coaches cut guys and give them a chance. I can't remember the name, but Jeff Fisher released someone today early on, a veteran player, and, he's given him a chance. I think it was Quentin Coples, maybe?
Yeah, Quentin Coples, he got cut.
Yeah, so, again, I mean, you feel bad because you're getting released, but I think his statement was, look, he's not going to fit our scheme in our system, and we know that now. We're not going to string this out. We're going to give him an opportunity to go test the market or potential last couple of weeks. So, that doesn't happen often. I mean, that's a very minimal. It happened to me. I got held to the last preseason game. I played well into the fourth preseason game, and I knew something was up when I had thought that there was some type of loyalty and something that already had been spoken beforehand, that I was good to go. So, again, in this business, at the end of the day, it is a business. And, no matter what's said behind closed doors, sometimes that's not exactly how it goes down.
What did they tell you when you got cut? What was that conversation like when they pick up the phone or they tell you in person, hey, Anthony, it's not going to work out here?
Well, I think there's always a time when you expect it. There's a time when you don't expect it. And, and I didn't. I was in Arizona, and it was after the last preseason game. We're outside working out the next day, and, they start bringing the guys out and start tapping on the shoulders and grabbing you and saying, Coach wants to see. And, I didn't think two things about it. I didn't think, anybody was coming my way, and they did. I was kind of shocked. A lot of my teammates and the people around me like, whoa, what's going on? And they always got to, you got to find out, they got to tell you something. And the thing, the thing that Wisenhunt told me was it came down to special teams. And I'll be quite honest with you, at that point in my career, I wasn't brought in to play special teams, so,
yeah.
That was the thing that, again, I had some other teams interested for more money. I decided to be loyal to someone that I thought there was going to be some connection with, and it just didn't work out. So, we've mended the fence per se since then, me and Coach, but that was a difficult time. I mean, you move your family, you sign a lease, you bring your kids, and you're going to school. Everything's set in stone because you have an understanding, and then something like that goes down where it's unexpected, and that changes and really kind of turns you upside down for a couple months because you're kind of set in your ways. So it happens a lot. I mean, I'm not the only player it's ever happened to. So again, you just got to go out there and you got to wait till that Tuesday, I think 4:00 of opening week to finally have the set roster, because even though you don't get released or anything happens the day after that last preseason game, you still got some, about 4 or 5 day window there where you're still not safe.
I have to imagine in that situation because, like you said, you basically have to talk yourself off the ledge because of all the financial implications and also the family impacts that have being cut that happens with the player. And it's part of the business. That's what happens, just like you said. But I have to imagine in that time period, you rely on your agent a lot to just try to cool you down and make the best decision for what's next in your career.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends where you are in your career. I mean, if you're a third, fourth year guy, then yeah, your agent becomes a guy. I mean, when you're in your 10th, 11th year, you can kind of speak for yourself with a lot of organizations and, through relationships and things of that nature. So again, those are the things you kind of value. If you have it, is value some of that relationships that you have and hope that they come through and you have your agent. But yeah, it's a kind of a two-way street depending on where you are in your career. So again, your agent is a guy that you want to lean on, of course, to get you that next opportunity.
Anthony Becht joins us right now on the Zach Gelb Show. Let's get to the Jets. And Geno Smith is not going to play in the fourth preseason game. That was announced today by the head football coach in Todd Bowles. With the Jets, do you see a situation where they keep 4 quarterbacks? And if not, and I think they're going to get rid of one, who do you think they get rid of? I'd have to imagine it's Geno Smith.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. It'd be interesting. I mean, the way I look at it is, if Ryan Fitzpatrick were to get hurt tomorrow, are you willing to give Bryce Petty the ball and feel good about what your chances are of winning games? I would lean on the side of saying I would not be comfortable with that. Bryce Petty has come a long way. He came from basically a system that had no correlation to the NFL at all, and it showed in 1 year, and he's shown huge strides on what he's actually done and gotten better at. But with that being said, he has not been tested. He has not been put in a situation where, he's facing defenses that, are intricate enough to say, okay, he's ready to go. Sometimes your gut says, the way he's playing and the feel that you had with him in the practices would say one thing, but I would say that Geno Smith right now will be safe. I don't see him getting cut. I mean, we'll see, or getting traded, or he could potentially get traded. I mean, look, everybody's always up for a trade, but I would say that, I'd say in the sake of having something that for sure is there, and you're not paying a lot of money for it, I'd say Bryce Petty might be the guy you have to cut just because, and it's not going to be an easy one. I mean, look, they drafted Christian Hackenberg, and he's not going anywhere, and you can't hide him per se on the roster, on the practice squad. So, to me, it's going to be a tough decision. They could potentially carry 4 until the fact that they actually need it to make another move on their roster or add or subtract a guy. Now, they could probably, a small chance they could get through the season and not have to worry about that. But knowing the way injuries are and how they happen each and every week, I'd say that's, that'd be tough. So, I know it's going to be a long discussion for them. I'm sure they have a plan. But if I had to make a decision today, I would have to let go of Bryce Petty, even though you see those kind of strides that he's making. But it just really comes down to me is who can play tomorrow if you needed him.
How big of a drop-off do you think there would be from a Ryan Fitzpatrick to a Geno Smith?
I'll be honest with you, Geno's never had the opportunity to play with the skill and the offensive line that they've had now. I kind of ask you to, name the receivers that he was throwing to when he went 8-8. You wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, you just
Currently,
don't know.
right?
Those guys are not. Yeah, those guys aren't in the league, and if they are, they're not doing anything. So, this is something where I feel like if they plugged him into those situations with those kind of guys, the Brandon Marshalls, the Deckers, and the running backs, the Fortes, that changes what he brings. And look, it was a tough 2 years. I mean, he was forced into a situation where he shouldn't have been starting, but because of a poor planned preseason, your starter goes down, and now he's the guy. So he really fell into something he wasn't prepared for at the time. So, that's kind of how I look at it. Obviously Geno's a West Virginia guy, and I'm a West Virginia guy, but I'm just realistically looking at it like I'm not completely all out on him. But, look, is he worth something in a trade? Absolutely. Is the Vikings a place that they get a little, over anxious and give you something overly, exciting in a trade? Sure, you entertain that, but that's got to happen soon. And if it doesn't, then you got to make a decision.
How about if he went to Louisville, Geno Smith? Would you feel the same way?
If he went to Louisville?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. I mean, that's just I really am taking that whole thing out of it because there is a skill set there that's intriguing, and I feel like if he wasn't rushed in and didn't have to force himself into the starting lineup so early, that we might be seeing a different, more polished player.
I'll say this, though, about the Jets, and you saw what happened when Marshall wasn't able to play in that third preseason game. They have to make sure that Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker are healthy, but Robbie Anderson, and I went to Temple, so I'm a big fan of Robbie Anderson. I'll be saying he's having a very impressive preseason for the Jets. I think he has to make this roster, no?
I would say he's right there in the mix. I would say if you put him on the practice squad that he would get picked up by another team. I know Robbie well myself, covering him, and I got to talk to him a little bit about his journey and the way the kind of kid he is. And he's a very humble, hardworking kid that, understands that, there's a way to kind of make a team and the things you have to do, and he's doing all the right things. And, if I had to sit down, he'd be a very tough choice for me to say he didn't earn a spot on the roster. So that, the thing is they have a very talented depth chart of wide receivers that just happen to be rookies or undrafted rookies also. So I'd say he's played the best. Jalen Marshall's obviously stepped up and done a great job. And then you've drafted a kid in the 7th round, and Peak, who you really like his skill set too.
Last one for Anthony Becht, who joins us right now on the hotline. You got to see the Giants' offensive line. I know they were without Pugh in preseason game number 3, but it didn't look too hot. I picked the Giants to win the NFC East. I'm not that confident in any of those teams in the NFC East, but that Giants' offensive line, the key to their season is going to be that offensive line, because you have that Manning and Beckham connection, but that connection doesn't work without the big boys up front, Anthony.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed. It is preseason. I'm a Flowers fan. He's young. Pugh's obviously got to be back in, and you have Newhouse and some of these players. But, they didn't seem to mesh well. The Jets obviously turned up a little bit of the pressure in the preseason. They weren't prepared for it. So, you just kind of chalk it up there as, game planning. But, listen, it's another year in that offensive system. Victor Cruz can stay healthy, and you add another weapon there, and they got to be able to run the ball. You're not going to be successful passing it every single play. They have to do something more in the run game. I think Rashad Jennings had a solid year last year, but they just need more. And it's a lot of mistakes. Can they cut down on those things, and can they stay away from turnovers? I think their defense will be better. I saw a lot of nice things on defense. But offensively, there wasn't anything to hang my hat on initially. But again, it's preseason. You take it for a grain of salt. They'll be better than last year, but I don't know if it's going to be a runaway, or you can easily say that they can win the division. I think the division as a whole is the worst in the NFL, and it's the closest in relationship to where the teams are. And it could come down to the last couple of weeks of the season.
Anthony, you're the best. I appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much.
You got it, my friend. Take care. Enjoy the season.